Good morning and welcome back to Morning Express. On the newsroom this morning, we've now been joined by Dennis Itumbi, who's Director, Digital Communications at the Office of the President. The rest of my panel, we have Patrick Gadara, who's a communications consultant, Gunjiri Wambogo, political commentator, and Clay Muganda, who is a features editor for The Standard on Sunday. Gentlemen, let's get into this other story. This planned trip, we understand, by the President to Nyanza, specifically Kisumu. Kuchuni coming out to talk about it. We have had that different aspects of why it has not happened. What's going on with that story first, Itumbi, from where you sit and what you've heard from the insiders?
Well, first of all, I sincerely...
And how it's been covered, yes.
Yeah, I think the story has been promoted more by innuendo, rumor, and misinformation, or you would say lack of information. If you look at the papers, different papers, and I specifically want to pick the Star of October 16, they basically say the president is not going to Kisumu because Nyanza leaders have said Odinga must be on the trip, and they say that is why Uhuru is not going to Kisumu. In State House, I mean, there has not been a voice. This is armchair journalism.
But it is the advisors who came out initially to say even the dates, the details, as cabinet secretaries.
Which advisor?
It was quoted in one of the dailies.
Which advisor?
So they're coming up with their own details and information.
Yeah, journalism, I think, on this story specifically, it's been pushed by people sitting on a rock chair.
So the State House has not planned for any trip
to go?
As far as I know, none.
It's easy for you to come sit here and then now say none, because on one hand, reports that we've been reading about and covering indicate otherwise.
You see, when you say reports, those reports emanate from the newsroom. So you should be able to defend it.
But even the spokesperson, Mr. Pisu himself, spoke to the matter and said that they're still undergoing more planning and deliberations to ensure that finally...
That is not true. Pull up the statement.
Okay, the point I would actually want to help him. Dennis could protect State House on this one, but we've had MPs saying they've met. They've actually been quoted, whether it's from Junet to Shabir to the Governor Ranguma, speaking about this trip. So, and they've spoken about meeting with officials from State House to plan this trip. So unless there's a complete discrepancy or
that would be a disinformation campaign
However, though, there's another flip side to this that I would like to bring in now from a political perspective.
Yes.
What has happened with this Kisumu trip is brilliant political spin as far as I'm concerned. You see, what has happened is like when the Americans do a movie, you see them right now launching a movie for 2015, and they'll have trailers, and you'll talk about it and you'll hype it up. What is now happening, we've actually talked about the Kisumu trip for close to a month. By that, even when the president finally makes it to Kisumu, all the things that could have been spoken about that trip, the people who could have wanted to resist it have had a moment, their moment in the limelight to say, oh, we don't like it. The people who want him to come. So if I was sitting in State House right now, I'd be very happy, because what has happened over that 1 month, you've actually gotten a sense of what to do, what not to do, when to do it, when not to do it, who to go with, who not to go with. So a part of me is actually convinced that a lot of this disinformation that Dennis is talking about could actually be deliberately instigated, as far as I'm concerned. And this
but he's alleging that it's the media.
Is a personal opinion.
He's alleging that it's
even
the
most brilliant, even the most brilliant political spin is based on fact. You know, this administration does not do spin.
I'll stop you there, because of the breaking news, which is now on the screen, that we're getting. Zambia president is dead. We're going to take a short break and come back with some more information on that. But President Zambia is dead is the breaking story that's just coming to our newsroom right now. We take a short break, and when we return, we'll have some more details on what just transpired there and what we're hearing, and as well continue with the newsroom latest. President of Zambia to die in office. I remember Levi Mwanawasa as well died as president. So our story will continue to follow for you. But before we went on break and talked about that story, we were on this tour that Dennis Itumbi, Director Digital Communication Office of the President, says that perhaps it is the media that is...
Not perhaps. The media
So
got it
let
wrong.
me give you this. You've asked me a number of questions, so I've done my homework to give you those answers, and you tell me what you think. Manoa Sipisu, on the visit that was to happen a couple of weeks ago, sent a statement to the newsroom. This was a statement from him saying that 2 particularly vital engagements which are incompatible with the extended visit to Nyanza this week are to happen. So then in that particular instant, it appeared that State House, didn't realize the president was to attend some vital meetings, had this Nyanza visit, and now sends a statement to say, okay, now he needs to attend this one. So acknowledging there is a planned Nyanza visit, in so saying in that particular statement.
It's unfortunate
Let
that
me
you
also
actually
say,
no, please read that statement. Read the whole of it. State House in the whole of, and that's why I told you to pull it, and it's good that you have pulled it. In the entire statement, State House 1 does not confirm whether there was, does not actually even say there was a plan.
why address the issue if there is no plan?
I want to disagree.
Why speak
here.
to it if there is no plan? Let him finish. Let him finish.
Let me finish. 1, there was a statement released because that the whole of the, and that was actually 3 days after you had done the story, because none of you bothered to ask State House if there was such a thing in the diary. So when it flopped, now media started realizing, we might have been duped, and so we started making calls. So as a unit, we sat down and came up with a statement, which was released by a spokesman. In the entire statement, because the president must visit, it is his duty to visit every part of this country. And that statement is basically saying, yes, it's the duty of the president to go to Kisumu, to go to Turkana, to go to
in the
Marsabit.
What you just read, I haven't seen the whole statement, but what you just read speaks of an extended Nyanza visit.
Nyanza this week. So he's very particular in his
this week. So if there's no plans,
so he's acknowledging there was a plan. And then
just like I said, that sometimes a question does not have to end with a question mark. I think Itumbi, you're trying to, Dennis, you're trying to spin this thing too much, and it's getting out of control. The thing is, the media, I remember talking about it here, like, all this time when the media kept on talking about the visit to Kisumu, I kept on seeing actually ads in the paper about the Mr. Kenyatta being a keynote speaker at the business summit. You see, I kept on seeing that. And actually, you don't have to come out. And I mean, all this time, these things are being reported. State House, as you say, or as where you say you work, did not come out to deny anything. Then later it comes and gives out that statement. Actually, that was an acknowledgement that actually this thing was in the pipeline. So unless this disorganization is actually, and I did mention that here, unless this disorganization is actually at State House or at the information center of State House, or unless you and the other people, as you call them, a unit, you guys don't operate as a unit, then this is why all these things are coming out. Because
you're an editor.
No,
let's be fair.
all this. No, you've spun this thing. I've listened to you spin it, and you see, at some point when you will probably listen to, maybe when you get more lessons about political communication from Manoa, you will understand that there's also another statement that I cannot confirm or deny. You cannot keep on denying everything, even when it's in the open, Dennis. At some point, this thing was happening.
I've allowed you to make
let him speak.
endless allegations and try to say when I learn about political communication, I don't know what political communication yourself you have done to be able to analyze. And you sit here on Newsroom every time and come up with all these statements about PSU. We listen, but listen, we will not even respond to that, and whether or not we are trained on political communication or not. We have a job and we will do. No, it's the issue because it's the issue because he has consistently said it without any proof, without any allegation. He doesn't even know what we are trained in. But anyway, let's go to the issues.
Yes.
The statement that we released from PSU and from the spokesman's office, and I challenge you to go read the entire statement, does not, and we're not spinning, it's fact. The first stories that ran 3 days before that statement. None of those stories quoted State House. None of them called us. He's saying, after the stories,
Joshua
would have put up.
The political advisor was quoted.
Who said Joshua Kutuni is a political advisor? You see, now these are all.
So now you're coming out to disown Joshua Kutuni.
No, just a problem. But he's a director of political affairs. We all know. Listen, it's important. Go to president.go. We are speaking about facts. Let's speak about facts.
Okay. So who's Joshua Kutuni?
Listen, guys. Listen. Let's do facts. Go to president.go.ke. It is well listed. Who is a political advisor to the president?
Okay, who is
now you want us to sit here and create another political advisor?
There are too many.
Surely, those are facts.
But doesn't Kutuni work for the president?
Not as an advisor. That's what I was correcting is a statement she has said that a political advisor.
But I mean,
you are dealing with
somebody who works
I'm going to that. Right. But you see, that is not a fact.
What is the fact?
The fact
Clarify.
is this. One, there were meetings that were held by the Director of Political Affairs.
He's the Director of Political Affairs?
Yes.
Okay. Which is an advisor.
Yeah. No, he's not an advisor. You know, it's good to get the facts.
All right.
It's like saying somebody's like, I'm a cabinet secretary and I'm not.
Director of Political Affairs.
So he held meetings. And the plan was, like every other place, he has held meetings with Turkana people for President to go to Turkana. He has held meetings with Samburu people. Even Marsabit, by the way, where we were supposed to launch G United, which is a youth volunteer program. He has held all those meetings. So those meetings were held. But was there a confirmation from even Kutuni himself, I challenge you, to say that there will be a presidential visit? The first statement he gave, yes, he had said there was one, but when he said, when these stories were being carried for Thursday to Saturday and a full cabinet meeting being held in Kisumu, all those were false statements. It was practically pure.
Well, what's the extended?
So how did
the statement refers
from
to?
Esipisu?
You see, extended.
Because that's from the statement.
The extended reference was to the 3-day visit to Nyanza.
So
which you're saying did not exist.
Which is what Kutuni, and that's what I've told you, the initial statement after the media had carried the first story. Kutuni tried to correct it and say there were 3 days to go to Nyanza and there was supposed to be a full cabinet meeting. There were even roads which you were told the president was supposed to open. By the way, if you go back to those roads, even one of those roads does not even exist.
I was getting
the statement doesn't say that there was no extended. In fact, it acknowledges that there is an extended, but now it says it can't happen because there are other commitments.
Exactly.
I mean,
so
a visit to the counties.
You seem to be saying that there was never an extended.
That's where the confusion is.
Yeah, exactly. From State House, there was absolutely no planned trip.
But the statement from the spokesperson says otherwise. He talks about why that extended visit will not happen.
Because
and that's why we're disagreeing. You maintain there was no visit. He's saying there was.
I mean, you guys, he was reacting to a published story that had said the president
Why
would be
react
in
to a published story which has no merit? Why then come to say we are cancelling the extended visit? Why not say there was no visit ever?
Yes.
That's what you should have said.
That is why I'm saying
one at a time.
Just a minute. That's why I'm saying extract the entire story. We don't talk about postponing the trip because it was not there in the first place.
Oh, come on, Dennis.
Extract
he says, and I have read this, two particularly vital engagements which are incompatible with an extended visit. Incompatible, meaning they were to happen at the same time. But now since they're incompatible,
I'm pulling the entire statement because you don't seem to be interested in pulling the entire statement. I'll pull it.
Please, do pull it. As Ngunjiri, you weigh in on what you're hearing this morning.
Okay, two things. First, I think it is a responsibility of State House to correct any stories that are published, especially published as mainstream stories by all the media houses, if they are false. I think it would be wrong for State House to allow the media to misinform the public.
Correct.
Like now Dennis is suggesting happened, where for a week, was it a week or two?
Yeah,
we were talking about a Kisumu trip. We had Junet commenting, we had Shabir commenting, we had Ranguma commenting.
Even Raila has commented.
Even Raila has commented. Actually, Sunday newspaper said I have no problem with moving to. So if it is true that there was never a trip by State House to go to Kisumu, then I think it was a responsibility or obligation of State House to actually come out immediately and say, by the way, I don't know where you guys got this story from, but it is not happening.
Yeah, because
we are going to go to Kisumu, but it is not in the immediate plans.
Yeah, because
then that way we kill the story.
Yeah, when
that's why I'm saying the fact that it has not been done that way makes me now, as a political analyst, start thinking this information was being developed to fill out the ground, and maybe when you start feeling and you realize, okay, maybe it's not the right time to go, you now backtrack and say, well, but then we were never going.
Becomes the
because the thing is, as the same way that Dennis is saying, like, where was the confirmation? He wants us to say, like, okay, fine, this was the confirmation. Where was the denial? Where was the denial?
You see, if government set up an office to deny every single story the media writes about us, we would have a department that would only I think would start a media house to react to stories published.
Why did you choose to on that particular point? Why did you all sit down and form that statement? Why then react to it?
The standard on
I thought you were reading from your statement.
From our statement, on covering our statement.
Because, if you read from the media, we might have then said our own things.
On the standard on October 14, 2014, covering our statement, says President Uhuru Kenyatta has reaffirmed his commitment to visit Nyanza region Then goes, and I want to get to an open quote because print stories are about open
yes,
quotes.
and TV stories are about up sound.
That's
Yes.
one you are reading. Have you read all of it?
The Standard on Monday that those who attended the meeting at President Harambe House office told the Standard on Monday that Uhuru's visit would be confirmed by the end of next week, and it will be likely be by next week. There was no confirmation, even from this meeting. So where did the media get the confirmation?
I'm saying because
I'm going to our statement.
Wait. For me, I'll tell you two things. Yeah. First, I have joy whenever I see a fallout between press and government, because
I think this is not press. This is not.
But let me finish.
This is.
But let me finish.
Dennis,
but the second thing is going back to what Dennis is reading. You know, again, there's reference to a planned trip. You know. Now, there really cannot be, you can't be speaking of a trip next week if actually it's not being planned. You know, so the media isn't inventing this trip.
No, we are not denying that there was a plan to, the president plans to visit every part of this country, and there are plans to us that. I mean, that is plan, if that is what you call planning, then we are set.
No,
Dennis,
actually, no.
Dennis.
Before we move away from that, my only issue is with that statement which I read for you earlier, that he says, the spokesperson, that because it's in conflict with these other engagements, then that prolonged tour will not
which
happen.
Means it was supposed to happen at that time.
And was still, that State House appears to have been caught off guard because the other engagements the president has, but they realize late in the day that, oh, he has to attend
the
this.
The president's diary
I'm just saying, according to,
to
that statement, according to the statement, we're talking to the statement from the spokesperson office. So now you're coming out to say...
The statement also says, the president's commitment to visiting Nyanza to discuss the region's development remains steadfast. He is therefore consulting closely with elected leaders and other stakeholders from the region so that a mutually acceptable schedule for an extended visit can be agreed. Because our presidential county visits are normally extended. We go for 3 days.
That's
and the
not
plan
your question.
No, it's important. That's because I'm answering the question of why we are talking about an extended visit. Because it's not those of going to a church and doing a fundraising and going back home. It is one for visit.
We're taking a dig at.
No.
Wow.
Anyway, okay, fine.
You know, can't have a discussion when people who are not, I was involved in the writing of this statement. I know why we said extended visit.
So will the president visit Kisumu?
Now, and I will repeat this and I've said it before, one of the major things that the president has told me throughout
is that I'll speak for myself.
No.
Let him finish.
Is that he has a mouth, and if he intends to speak, he'll speak for himself. And when he's not, he has a spokesperson who will do it. And that is what and that now gets us back to a discussion that I've watched that has happened here about sourcing of stories. So if you're sourcing stories, if you want to ask me about how to treat cancer in Kenya, I'm not the right person. But if you give me time to go speak to doctors, I'll get the answer and I'll come back to you. Where do you source? You cannot call, Kibaki is an economist, former President Kibaki is an economist, for example. If I get a quote in a newspaper where he's talking about economics, that's a proper sourcing of the story. But if you call former President Kibaki at this moment and ask him a question about, say, Ebola, and how the best way to fight it, then that's the wrong sourcing of stories. Stories must be sourced from the experts.
Can I put in a word, AJ?
And that is why this story has been going round and round, because the quote you have is a trader in Kisumu, is a boda rider in Kisumu. I mean, Taifa Leo carried that story, and they were basically on a boda.
I'm sorry.
Let's hear from him, then we'll come together.
I think Dennis, I think we're just going around in circles here. I don't want to get into all these things like, okay, you're saying that the president says that he has a mouth, he'll speak for himself, and then again you're here speaking for State House and telling us. I mean, I think we have to admit, Dennis, yes, people make mistakes. Even the unit at State House, the communications unit, it's not perfect. You see, but we cannot keep on denying things like where all indications. I know you're going to say, oh, there was no quote here, there was no quote there, and all that. But you see, all these things, I mean, like, where was even the denial? Just the fact that the statement, the way it was given later, I mean, it was admitting like there was a visit, there was a planned visit. And then all these other things that you're saying, like if the government would set up an office to deny, I mean, that's what they would do the whole. I don't think we keep on getting all these things wrong all the time, because if anything, Dennis, you're always fast to deny. Even when it was reported that a State House vehicle had been stolen, you kept on denying. I mean, just a minute, you kept on denying, but But all these things, what was happening
Clay,
what was happening?
No. I also not allow you to throw in things. I stand even now that there is absolutely no car in the presidential motorcade that got lost. The president has 2 official motorcades. None of them has a BMW. That is a fact.
Oh, they don't have a BMW. They're doing badly.
In the presidential, motorcade.
So our time is up.
But Clay just loves throwing things here which don't exist.
I think Dennis, we need
if we went back to your history, also, I would come up with a lot of things which are facts.
We need to get
about stories which you have written, which are not your original stories. There are many things we can say about you. Your real names and why you use Clay and not your real names. They are facts.
To be Clay, please, Gadara, as we bring this to a close, because what a lot of what we're hearing now is that the media is perhaps taking a new role of creating stories that
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I mean, I've been a critic of Kenyan media for a long time. But in this case, I really have to say that if the media did get it wrong, and I know part of political communication is sourcing from stories from your insiders who may not always want to be identified. But in this case, they did have a source from within the presidency. You know, and also secondly, as Itumbi says, 3 days, it took the government 3 days to come out and issue a statement. And even when they issued a statement, they didn't say, actually, there is no trip planned. They talked of an extended trip that can't happen now. You know, now, my problem with that is that it creates a confusion. Now, perhaps in your view of the world, that there was nothing planned. There were talks about it, but nothing concrete planned. Maybe that's what you needed to communicate. But you should have come out at the beginning when these stories came out to say that, look, this is not, there's nothing, there's no trip. We're just talking about it, but there's no trip. You know, that didn't happen. You know, it's important for me that also I think the media itself needs to interrogate how it presents these sorts of stories. And it's not just this Kisumu, you know, whether Kisumu was going to happen or not. But as we spoke before on the current land issue, you know, when it reports certain figures, says 40 MPs are involved, and chooses not to name who those 40 MPs, why? And it should explain to us, why is it that it's not naming them? When it says a cabinet secretary, it has established, that's a statement, that's what it says. It has established that a cabinet secretary is involved, that top security officials are involved, and it chooses not to name them. At least give us a reason. Why are you not naming these people? Is that you're not sure?
Our time is up, but Bunjiri, I'll come to you on what I mentioned earlier. When politicians, for example, in this instance, with this Kisumu visit, from court have said, even if the president was to go or have put preconditions to them being part of the visit because they're afraid the media then will come out and spin it to show that they're shifting alliances. Does the media do that, especially when we're seeing this political, 2 different sides, that being seen with this other one, then the media carries that as a story that inroads have been made, this one now is in bed with the other side and the likes?
First and foremost, my experience has been that the media might carry a story that looks like they're spinning, but more often than not, they're right. More often than not, what will be happening is that by the time we have we might not have very many other really nice journalists in other spheres of media, but our political journalists are actually very on point on a lot of the stories that they run with. And for example, just using this story of Kisumu, why Dennis is going to find himself in a spot is because we had stories covered quoting Ranguma, the governor of Kisumu. Not once, not twice, on several occasions, first complaining about the trip being postponed, first confirming the trip was going to be happening, then saying that he was upset about the trip being postponed. Now, you see, when we have a county government giving one side of a story, and then we don't have a response from the national government, either denying or confirming the story, you will tend to go with the guy who is saying whatever he's saying. So we have a situation, and I'm actually inclined to believe that that trip was planned. Why? Because of the way that story rolled out. A lot of the times when you see the media, when you hear politicians complaining that we don't want to look like we have switched sides, by the time you start saying that, then you already have, there's something going on that you don't want to come out yet. By the time most, especially the mainstream the more respectable media houses actually running the story saying there's a possibility. We remember Mungaro, the court chief whip who got de-whipped, for lack of another word. We had that story for quite a while that he's going to be removed as chief whip, and people kept denying. CORD kept denying. Raila denied. He actually got whipped. So I tend to, a lot of the times when I read a political story that looks like a rumor in a respectable newspaper, I'm more inclined to actually follow it up, to believe it, than not.
Itumbi, in terms of how a lot of what comes from State House or is concerned with State House and is covered, what do you think about it? Does it get objectivity? Do you think it leans towards politicizing it a little bit more, or perhaps being on the other side?
And State House is the person who is the chief most boss at State House is a political leader. So getting a political story or being a story being politicized, that is not a problem. Gunjiri raises a very interesting issue. But before I go to that, please remember that we always sent the State House diary for the next day a day before. So on the day we sent this statement was the diary for the next day. And therefore it was important for us to explain why the diary for the next day does not touch on Kisumu, which had been covered in the media. And that is why that statement was released on the day before that time. And also, even the most important thing, Gujiri says because the governor said, then it must be a true story. I will not get, no one has denied even that statement that the president plans to visit Kisumu. And I've said the president plans to visit Marsabit, the president plans to visit Turkana. No one denies that basic and true fact. Therefore, issuing a denial to say the president has not planned would be counterproductive for us as a strategic communication unit. But it was not true that the dates that had been given, that the president had confirmed. And this idea of saying that State House suddenly realized the president was engaged is not true. Clay himself, he actually says he saw those posters for Rwanda. Yeah, I mean, we had even planned for Olkaria long before. We even had adverts going out by Kengen. We had launched a portal which was covered widely. Any serious journalist worthy salt would have seen a clear demonstration of where the president was heading. And by the way, there are people, even in this newsroom, whose names I can tell you if you're interested, who get the newsroom, the diary on our short-term, mid-term, and long-term for the president. And they knew about the diary. But intentionally, because the paper sells better when you have stories like those, and that is why you have, for instance, the story on Raila and Uhuru definitely is a big sell. So there's a profit angle to the telling of that story. But the fact is, there was absolutely nothing on the president's diary throughout that period, or even now for this week, because yesterday I read another story in the People saying he's now going to Kisumu again today. So what this panel is suggesting is that now again you would have written a statement to deny again. We can't keep doing this.
Okay, thank you. Finally, Clay.
I think I still want to insist on this. Like when you were here the last time, actually, I castigated the media and I was saying like this ad had been running for all this time, and I was even wondering where these stories came from. But I think, Dennis, I think sometimes like if it's such a visit to Kisumu or that particular thing, you can't just keep on. I mean, the media can't just lie about the presidency like that, and then the strategic communication unit just sits back. I think the best thing was probably to issue a statement, and since there was no statement to deny this, and the statement that came later was more or less like admitting like there was a planned visit, I think there was more or less like an admission that it was planned. You know, I think this should have been done earlier. This thing should have been arrested earlier, because the media did not actually meet. All these papers did not have a meeting, because even the so-called paper that is probably aligned to Mr. Kenyatta, I think they also had such kind of stories about the Kisumu visit. So I think this should have been denied.
Mr. Kenyatta does not control the editorial policy.
No, I know it does not control. Does not control. Yeah. But it says that is what happened. You know, this thing should have been denied.
And Odhiambo is a beautiful name.
All right. Muganda features editor Standard on Sunday. Dennis Itumbi, who's director of digital communication, Office of the President. Ngunjiri Wambogo, who's a political commentator. Patrick Gadara, communications consultant. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We should have you a little bit more often. Looks like we'll be having some interesting conversations when the media is covering some things that are not perhaps too nice from your end. But as you said, in terms of politics, it is a political office. It does hold still at the end of the day, so some of these issues will be politicized. But we thank you for being with us, and thank you everybody for watching. Stay with us. There's breaking news. We'll continue to have updates for you. President Michael Sata of Zambia died in a London hospital. More details in the next few minutes before we wrap up the show. And also in our lifestyle segment, True Love is now 10 years old, and we'll talk more about some of the feature stories that they cover and what next for the organization.